Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the 9th Annual Short Circuit Pacific Rim Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A for Tuesday, May 18th, 2021. My name is David Geis, Executive Director of CineVic Society of Independent Filmmakers. CineVic acknowledges and respects the long history of the ʷəŋən-speaking people, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, as well as the Wasanich First Nation, on whose traditional and unceded territories we carry out our activities. The colonial name for this region is Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and our headquarters is in the city of Victoria. CineVic is an artist-run society supporting independent filmmakers and media artists with accessible programming, affordable equipment, professional development resources, and cinematic exhibition opportunities since 1991. And Short Circuit is our annual showcase of short films from over 30 countries around the Pacific Rim. This year is our biggest festival ever, with 50 films streaming on demand until May 31st. Many filmmaker Q&As. If you missed any, you can still watch the recordings on YouTube. And for the locals in Victoria, we have an outdoor mini cinema with all the films running 24/7 in Odeon Alley, aka Millie's Lane in downtown Victoria, just off Yates Street. We've also got the 5th edition of our CineSpark program with the live pitch event coming up this Wednesday, tomorrow night, May 19th at 7 p.m. Pacific time, again on YouTube. This year's top 5 screenwriters will pitch their short film ideas to a panel of judges, and one winner will walk away with a production package of cash, equipment, and resources valued at over $17,500, courtesy of CineVic, William F. White International, and Moto Car Share Co-op. For the festival, check out all the info, get your tickets, watch the Q&As, etc., at shortcircuitfilmfestival.com. We're proud to be setting a new standard of sharing ticket sales equally with all of our filmmakers, so please help us spread the word, buy your tickets, and support artists around the world. Big thank you to our funders, Canada Council for the Arts, BC Arts Council, Province of British Columbia, CRD Arts Service, and Telefilm Canada. So like I said, this year, of course, we're broadcasting our Filmmaker Q&As live on YouTube, where I assume you're watching right now. Please type your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. Please also include the name of the filmmaker to whom you're directing your question, just so we know who to ask, or maybe your question's for everybody, that's fine too. If you don't see the chat box somewhere on your screen, make sure you click the live chat or show chat button, and be aware that your question or comment and your screen name may be selected to appear on the screen. The recording of this video will stay up on YouTube after we're done here today, so please help us like, subscribe, and share this video widely. So now, to introduce our moderator for today's Q&A, bringing in Soraya Sahar. Welcome, Soraya. Also in Victoria, Soraya is a brand new CineVic member and recent graduate of the NIC, North Island College Motion Picture Production Assistant Program. And yeah, we're glad to have you here. Thanks for jumping in for moderating. I'll basically hand it over to Soraya right now.
All right, well, thank you, David. Yeah, I watched Stories of Decolonization over the weekend, and so I'm very happy and excited to be here with you all today. Getting right to it. So introduce the filmmakers from the screening program Stories of Decolonization, showcasing the work of talented filmmakers from Australia, New Zealand, and Mexico. We have Josephine, Stewart-Te. Whiu. I would like to apologize ahead of time for any mispronunciation. She directed Annie, and the film is from New Zealand. So Josephine is an award-winning New Zealand-based writer and director. Her films have been selected to screen at top international film festivals, including Berlinale and TIFF. In 2020, Josephine was selected for the TIFF Filmmakers Lab and awarded the Canada Goose Fellowship. Her film follows 9-year-old Annie as she drifts into a land of play and make-believe after her mother runs out on the family, leaving Annie and her father to fend for themselves. Next, we have Jeremiah Tauamiti, directed Liliu, also from New Zealand. Jeremiah is a writer-director with a passion for Pacific stories. His first New Zealand Film Commission short, Maria, was accepted into many festivals, including Imaginative, Skab-Magovat Film Festival, Hawaiian Film Festival, and won the Best Pacifica Short Award at the Wairomariri Film Festival. His short film Liliu was set and shot in Samoa and had its world premiere at the 2019 Berlinale. Jeremiah holds the High Chief titles Falavo and Nanai, bestowed from his father's family in the district of Waletai, and Samoa. Now, Liliu tells the story of a young, ambitious court interpreter who risks everything when Nua, a wrongfully imprisoned chief, fights to get back to her stranded grandchildren. What follows is a tirade of verbal punches between Solo, Nua, and an old judge hell-bent on colonial rule in Samoa. Next, we have Itandehui Jansen, directed Time and the Seashell, and Armando Bautista García, produced and wrote Time and the Seashell. They're currently in Edinburgh, Scotland, but originally from Mexico. Itandehui Jansen was born in Oaxaca, Mexico, and studied film directing at the Netherlands Film Academy in Amsterdam. Her documentaries and short films have screened at international festivals such as the IDFA International Documentary Film Festival Amsterdam and the Morelia International Film Festival. Her short film, The Last Council, won several international awards and was nominated for the Mexican Film Critics Award Diosa de Plata. She is currently an assistant professor in the film program at the University of Edinburgh. The film shows us a young indigenous boy who imagines his future while listening to the sounds of a seashell. An indigenous man recalls his past listening to the same seashell. Now, the man remembers birds and fireflies in his childhood that are no longer there. And next, we have Chantelle Murray, director of My Name is Mudju, also from Australia. She is a proud Bardi woman. Chantal Murray began her career as a performer in Queensland, but found her true passion off screen as a writer and director, developing her own content with a focus on Aboriginal history. Her debut directing piece, My Name is Mudju, has been selected to screen at the Bronze Lens Film Festival, Melbourne International Film Festival, Cinefest Oz, Windsor, and won Best Short at Rotorua International Film Festival. Now, her film takes place in 1950s Australia. Born the wrong race, Mudju's daughter has been stolen and placed in a mission orphanage. So for over 10 years, through the fence of the mission under blanket of night, Mudju meets with her daughter, Mudju meets with her daughter, and Mudju is subjected to repeated violence, but she will not submit. A mother's love will conquer all. So now, question to the viewers. Please, you can type in your questions in the chat. And so we're going to look over at that right now. Okay, so we're going to start with Josephine. First question, was Annie's make-believe a coping mechanism? And if so, does it foreshadow repeated cycles of generational trauma?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. Yeah, I guess her make-believe world was a way of coping. I guess more of a way of understanding what was going on in her family unit. But a lot of it is mimicry of her mum, predominantly that she's seen and watched, and she understands that through play. I can't remember what the second part of the question was.
The question was, does it foreshadow cycles of generational trauma? So is Annie then, does it foreshadow Annie then, you know, a little bit of insight into what her future might look like?
No,
No.
I don't think
Okay.
so.
Okay.
I want to, yeah, I would say no.
No, okay.
I don't quite know how to answer that. No, I'm going to say no. I like to keep it hopeful, you know.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Question for Jeremiah. So I'll be asking this question actually. So as a viewer who has participated in some decolonization initiatives, it was really cathartic watching Nua deliver such a powerful speech. I wonder, what was it like for the cast and crew, including yourself, shooting that scene?
Oh yeah, it was a pretty full-on scene. You know, that's kind of like the main whole, you know, the big monologue for the whole film, really. And I hope she doesn't mind me saying, but Anna, who played Noor, she found that quite hard, that scene. And I kind of, to be honest, I didn't really want to, well, how do I put it? I actually didn't want to make it that easy for her, because, you know, it was supposed to be the moment where she becomes, well, I wanted her to be at her most vulnerable, and it is in the film supposed to be the place where she just lets it all go, you know. So she kind of found it really hard, and I had a word to the judge, Peter, and I actually asked him to go even further with the way that he was, like, you know, sort of an insult, and she kind of broke after that, and we had done lots and lots of takes, but I know, and she knows, Anna knows as well, that she wasn't quite there yet, and so when the judge said this thing, which I won't repeat, because he kind of looked at me and said, "Do you really want me to say that? You really want me to say that with all these Samoans around me?" I was like, "Yeah, say it, just say it." And anyway, when he did, she really broke, and she went to that place where I was really proud of her. You know, it was a hard place to go to, and we were in Samoa, and I think just everything that we're just being in that place made it, you know, all the more special, and enabled her to go there. And yeah, it took a long time, but I'm really proud of her. She got there in the end. So it was special, as you know, as everyone will know, like when you see your own words sort of come to life, it's pretty amazing, and it's kind of the reason why you do it. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I recall seeing like she was in tears. She really teared up on that. I can imagine it must have been very hard for her. And I mean, I remember watching it, feeling very emotional. It was very emotional watching that scene, but at the same time, seeing her speak truth to power and shooting it, you know, right back at him, you know, that was what I feel like so many people need to see on screen more. Like it's just things that we don't get in our everyday lives, you know. I mean, for myself as an immigrant, you know, having been told, go back to your own country, and then you think, well, it's not your land, it belongs to Indigenous people. But for them, it's like, oh, well, out of sight, out of mind. But here we have stories of Indigenous peoples right there. You can't turn away from it. It's there. You see it, you hear it, you acknowledge it. And so it's great to see that representation, and the voiceless having a voice. Thank you so much for that. Next, for Itandehui Jansen and Armando Bautista García. So there's a theme of loss and the fear of loss. How does film as a medium help share and remember that? And how does it contribute to the preservation of culture?
You are the director.
Well, of course, film can contribute in the sense that it can contribute to documenting aspects, or to, in this case, also language. We very much wanted to make it in Nche, which is a language that I do not speak. My mother speaks, but I don't. I didn't learn Nche. But Armando speaks, and we have been working together in order to make films in Nche, because it is a film that younger generations are losing as well in Mexico. So film can partially do that, but I think one of the things we wanted to do with this short film is question how much it can do so. Towards the end of the film, when the older man asks, is it really worth it? Do you think it makes any sense? I think it's really about that, like how much can art and film really contribute to documenting. So I think we were expressing that doubt as well. I think it can do something, but there's also a lot that can't be done through film. We're quite conscious of that. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thank you. Actually, you know what? That was one of the overlapping themes I've noticed in all the films, was the use of language as well as family. And so for myself, growing up in Toronto as an immigrant, I've seen how quick and easy it is to lose one's language, traditions, and even sense of community in a colonial world that is increasingly individualistic. I can only imagine how difficult it must be for Indigenous peoples being surrounded by these systems that are just closing in on you. So how important is it, and this is a question for all of you, how important is it for you to incorporate your languages into your films?
I think one of the things I noticed in the program is how much different kinds of colonial violence we've all suffered. And in Mexico, it's different than, of course, in New Zealand or Australia, where there were boarding schools, and that didn't happen in Mexico. But for example, what happened to my mother is that she was forced to migrate for economic reasons quite young. And that happened to actually all my mother's generation. So there is this similar experience of being alienated from your community, of being fragmented from your family. And I saw that in all the films in a way, that this family fragmentation and this being forced and to go somewhere else or to adopt a different culture in quite a violent way. That is something that in a way we share, even though we have very specific, different and personal experiences. I think that is something that we recognize, that there is this violence, and that in a way speaking your language and upholding traditions is a way of resistance.
Thank you so much for that. And do we have Chantelle here with us?
We do not. I think Chantelle has plans have changed, so we may not. She may still tune in before the end, but yeah, still not here. So, but that's okay. We'll forge on with the filmmakers we do have.
Okay. So I guess another question. Well, actually, no. Just to continue on from the last question, was there anyone else who would like to answer about how important it is to incorporate languages into your films?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think it's massive, because like you two were saying, it's another form of I guess oppression when you lose your language, and that's quite traumatic, and that can carry on through a couple generations at least, you know. I was fluent when I was a child, and then I lost it because I grew up in a city which is not a lot of islanders, and I didn't start to relearn it till I was about 19, 20 years old. So I'm trying to get the language into my films as much as possible, so that you know, other generations can see it and be quite proud of it. I love hearing my language on the big screen, because it just never happens, you know. It's like we might get a Samoan film once every couple of years, and that's not enough for me. Like, I just want to hear it all the time, in songs, in dance, and everything. So yeah, it's a big one for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I don't know if Josephine wanted to add to that.
Look, I agree with what everyone's saying. My father is Māori, but he was raised through state care. So my grandmother could speak the language. My dad can't at all, really. And I'm relearning that, which is really challenging and problematic. But, you know, being Māori and from New Zealand, there are far more Māori films made here than Samoan films, like Jeremiah was saying. So there are people who can speak that language, and it gets really complicated for me, I think, not feeling raised Māori or Māori enough. Sometimes I wonder if I have the right to, when there are people who can speak it. But, you know, as Ita was saying. It's just another form of decolonization, and for me, in terms of even feeling like I have a right to use that language on cinema. So I actively try and tell more contemporary Māori stories because that's what I feel like I can relate to.
What you're saying sounds like imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah. A diaspora migrant communities feel that too, especially once we've grown up, outside of their homeland and growing up and wondering how much we can speak, how much right we have to speak on it too. Yeah, diaspora or imposter syndrome is very real.
Yeah. Well, and it's quite popular at the moment, which is really beautiful. The Māori language Te Reo is making a real resurgence in New Zealand, but I have friends who are Caucasian that can speak it better than me, and there's a sort of shame that comes with that, and also it's complicated. For me, learning the language carries a lot more history and power, but also pain. So it's an interesting one.
Absolutely. I mean, there's also some privilege that comes into being able to study our, cultures, our languages, and having access to it that, people who are from those communities may not be able to. I can imagine. Okay, so another question for everyone here is, here in Canada, the struggles over pipelines and Indigenous jurisdiction have been a flashpoint for Indigenous settler relations. Have you seen parallel issues in your respective communities?
I know that because I live in New Zealand, but in Samoa, I still try to, keep understand what's happening back home in the homeland in Samoa, and I go there quite often. So I know there seems to be a lot of development in the islands in general, from countries like China and Japan. Samoa's had a long history of Chinese immigration since the Germans took control of Samoa, and so they brought on Chinese labor a long time ago. And even if you see a lot of Pacific Islanders or Samoans, you actually think they're Chinese. That's how long that Chinese have been there. And I'm quite sure I have Chinese in my own family, but it's something that's not really spoken about because Germans and even New Zealanders, when New Zealand took over Samoa, actually made it illegal for Chinese to marry Samoans, and so they would go and marry in the forests and stuff in secrecy. So there's been a lot of money gifted to the Samoan government for Chinese development, Japanese development. Obviously, there's a lot of whales in the Pacific Ocean, so a lot of people are talking about that. So yeah, that's something that's been happening for the last couple of years, and so a lot of, I guess, some of the things that have been sort of coming up is who can sell land to foreign people, because traditionally it was only, whoever was the chief of that land could sell that land and had authority over that land. But now the government is stepping in and saying, actually, you should give up that land for the development for some of these overseas countries. So it's still stuff that's happening, that happened 100 years ago is continuously coming up.
Thank you. Okay. Questions of filmmakers. Do you have any questions or comments for each other?
I have a question for Jeremiah. I enjoyed your film, It was very, very interesting, very, very powerful. And the question is, what's the how is the discussion in this kind of topic is in your country?
Yeah, so we just had an election, and 2 days ago, Samoa actually elected its first female prime minister ever. Okay. The last government had actually been in power for about 20 years, and in the last 4 years, overseas ownership of land has increased, and the power of the chief, the family chief, has been taken away more and more. Oh man, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this one. Yeah, so it's actually been, it's something that's coming up, that has been coming up more and more in the last 2 or 3 years, and a lot of the population has been saying it's actually time up for the government. They're taking away the traditional power more and more every year, and so unfortunately, whenever you have a rising up from the people, the government take away even more power. Like, one of the things they're trying to say is that they're going to shut down Facebook, because that's how most of our people talk to their family members overseas, and family members overseas, we're always sending back money to our family in the islands, and so now the government is saying, well, those chiefs will no longer be able to have any kind of say or vote to do with the homeland. So it's small but major things like that that are having a big impact. And for me, it's exactly the same in the film. Like, people are getting silenced. Our traditional ways are being taken away from us. But what's worse is it's actually not. Well, it is influenced by the outside countries. But what's worse for me is when our own people do it to ourselves. For greed and just their own personal wants and needs. It's just, for me, that's the worst, actually, is when we turn on our own.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
I had a question for you, Armando, and that was I love the shot of the corn on the boy, on his body, and I've read some and watched some other stuff about how important corn is to your people. So I was just wondering about that shot, if you could talk about that shot. I thought it was beautiful.
The rice.
Was it?
I remember that, yes. Oh, yes, the maize is very...
Corn.
The corn is very particular plant for us. There are many indigenous traditions. They cultivate this kind of plant. It's very common in Mexico. And for us, do we have any close connection with this kind of plant? Because it's part of their food for us.
And is it the same like religious as well? Does it have some importance religiously, or?
Yes, I think it does, although indigenous religions really merged with Catholicism, and one of the things that you see is that corn is often equated with Christ, for example, because of course the Spaniards brought Catholicism through Mexico, but there remained a lot of indigenous traditions beneath that, so corn is considered a very sacred plant. And to be honest, it's a shot that I thought about for a very long time because I really liked the image, and we came up with it as a way to express, let's say, wanting to feel connected to your identity. But then again, I'm sure that my grandmother would say, like, you cannot do that. You cannot play with corn. You cannot use it to make a film with it because it's too sacred to do that. But, well, we did it anyway.
Before to plant corn, we have to pronounce some words with to the land, obviously. Yes.
Yeah, you need to
Yes.
ask permission to
Yes.
plant it and to harvest it. And so it is a very sacred plant, and actually
Yeah.
what we did was a little bit transgressive, maybe.
Yeah, I thought it was lovely how it was over his heart and just, you know, trying to, I guess, merging and how close and important it was. It was lovely.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
I'll maybe just jump in and say we've got a question from the chat for Josephine. So I will bring that up on the screen if you want to read it out, Saraya.
Yeah, I was just about to do that. Yeah, so the question from one viewer is, Josephine, I really enjoyed Annie. Most depictions of single-parent homes on screen center the child-mother relationship. What was the thought process behind depicting a father-daughter relationship?
Oh, I wanted to actually look at, so in New Zealand cinema, particularly in Māori cinema, and in our media, unfortunately, Māori men are always portrayed as violent, poor, just always in trouble with the law. And I got sick of it. And I wanted to look at what it means to be a good Māori father, because there are good Māori men out there. So I sort of wanted to take this really common narrative and turn it on its head. And I wanted the dad to be the maternal figure in her life, or the paternal figure, but looking at masculinity as something that can be really soft and kind and warm. And that's an Indigenous trait. We actually filmed it at my dad's house. My dad lives there. And it was very much based on my relationship with him. He was a solo parent, so I would spend week on, week off with my mum and my dad. So that was part of the personal reason behind that. But the bigger reason was I just had enough of the common narrative and I wanted to flip it on its head.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually very relatable. I feel like so many racialized communities have had to deal with narratives that are not truly representative of them. And so actually, we can even carry on that. I would like to do that as a follow-up question for everyone here is, what narratives did you want to change from how you've seen the portrayals that you've seen of your respective communities on screen before? So what narratives did you want to change?
I think I love what Josephine did with Annie, and you know, the fact that she's brought up what has been playing on a lot of guys' minds, well, a lot of men, you know, here in Aotearoa, is she's exactly right. This we're always portrayed as one thing, and it's almost the accepted narrative in New Zealand media, and it's actually depressing. And there's so many, I know so many sad men in our community. Yeah, and it was such a real portrayal, and I love that film. And I met the actor after a screening, and I went up to him. I'm sorry, I forget his name, Josephine. I just think he did such an amazing job. Maka,
Yeah.
and so relatable. It was just someone on screen that was just so real in my life. I'd seen so many men like that, and yet we're always portrayed as something else. So yeah, for me, I just want to say it was an amazing job you did, Josephine. So real, so accurate, and yet not seen enough.
A question for Ida and Armando. Was there any narratives that you want to see change?
Similar to Josephine, and I agree, there is a lot of vulnerability and real tenderness in the relationship between the father and the daughter, and I really like that. And I think in our film as well, I really wanted to explore. I had made a feature film before that really focused on mother-daughter relation. So I was really interested in exploring aspects of masculinity, and I thought, well, this is going to be about caring for the land and about care in a way. I tried to make a tender film, And I think that's something that is not often associated with men. In general, not only in our communities, but I mean, if we don't portray it that way, then it's also, what are we teaching our children? So I think it's really important that we have those stories about masculinity portrayed differently than just, let's say, macho strength, but there are different kinds of strengths that you can show. Yeah, so that was important for us as well, and I really, really enjoyed that in Josephine's film.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Actually, there was a follow-up comment for Josephine. Thank you so much, Josephine. I see an intersection in the depiction you describe in the portrayals of Black fathers in the United States. I think in Australia, Indigenous peoples are also called Black. It's interesting because here in like North America, they're separate. There's Indigenous peoples and Black peoples, but in places like in Australia, and I'm not sure if it's the case for New Zealand, please correct me if I'm wrong, where they intersect, being recognized as both Indigenous and Black, or being perceived that way.
Yeah, Jeremiah, you could probably add to this as well. I think in a more modern day context, Black is not really used for Māori or Pacifica so much, because of the impact that American culture has had in New Zealand. However, it has been used. I have heard it been used. I have heard my father being called it, and it is a derogatory term in New Zealand. Yeah, but Jeremiah, you might.
No, yeah, exactly the same as what Josephine said. I think most of the time now we're referred to as brown, just to differentiate. But at the same time, it's not used officially Black, I don't think, here in Aotearoa. But there is a growing population of Black people from Africa, and quite a few from America have been coming over here as well. So it's there, but it's not really used too often, to be honest.
Okay, yeah. Here we use the term BIPOC. Do you guys use something similar? Black. Oh, okay. So it's BIPOC. So Black Indigenous People of Color. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I guess that's specific to North America then. All right. Okay. So, question for the filmmakers: what are you working on now or next?
So I am just finalizing. I've probably been finalized for ages, actually. Working on my feature film drama, which is pretty much based on my own life in the 1990s, growing up in a city, in a side of town which was predominantly, we had a lot of skinhead gangs in my area, neo-Nazi gangs, and so it's a family drama about a Samoan family trying to find its feet in a city which was pretty tumultuous at the time, and quite violent, quite dangerous. And the two main characters are brothers who, one doesn't really like to take a backward step to people who are insulting or violent, and another one who's not quite the same, but at the same time struggles with how he's been treated and his parents are being treated. And so, yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Hi, we are developing a new project, a feature long film, and we are working the first draft, and we are in a lab in Canada, in the intensive screenwriting intensive with imaginative in Canada.
It's a feature drama film set in 12th century Mexico that we're working on, so it's pre-colonial. It will be entirely Mixtec spoken, at least that's what we want, and we're writing it in Mixtec. And it's about, let's say, Mixtec princess. That's of course proxy because we didn't use princesses, but at least the daughter of a ruler of the region who finds out that her father was murdered. So he didn't die a natural death. He was murdered 15 years before the story starts, and she wants to find out what really happened. So it's like a mystery film.
I've actually just finished another short film. Last year, we were finished off the post-production for that, which is swings wildly in the opposite direction of Ani. It's quite a female-driven film, sort of celebrating, in a way, the different stages of being a woman from prepubescent to sort of like this mother age to when you get older. It's set at a day at a local pools, and it's sort of fiercely celebrates women. But aside from that, I've got a couple of feature films in development, one of which is an extension of Ani, looking at my own childhood and set in Auckland, a very sort of, I was raised in the city in Aotearoa, in the biggest city, Auckland. So it's it looks at being young and Indigenous, but in a cityscape, and the disconnect, I guess you could say, from where you come from and where you find yourself. It's a story about home, really. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I actually really very much look forward to these new projects coming out. Okay, so
sorry, Dave, if you don't mind, I'll just before we wrap up, I just sort of sitting here behind the scenes thinking of sort of, I guess, something maybe a more technical question. If everybody has a couple more minutes to stick around, I could sort of pose this to everybody. Although I'd start probably with Josephine, with Annie. I'm just sort of wondering the technical scope of the film, you know, people sort of giving advice to sort of new filmmakers of like, you know, how to, for feasibility, you know, sort of keep your minimal locations, keep your actors low, you know, in theater, they call it sort of a two-hander or something, you know, you've got two characters in kind of one location, although you do quite a good job of, you know, kind of going around the whole house. So it's not like you're just in one room, but it is one house. I guess I'm just wondering how much that comes from, you know, the technical side of making the film more feasible to produce versus the content and the story you want to tell. You know, did the story drive that two character, one home thing, or was it more of a technical feasibility kind of thing, or a mixture of both? The same question after that could probably go to Ida and Armando. Jeremiah, you know, maybe your film is a bit more grander in scope, but then, you know, the flip side of that question for you, I guess, might be more like, you know, is that what you were going for, is maybe a more grander, epic, sort of almost like feature film look with yours? But maybe start with Josephine.
Yeah, so I first wrote Ani as a short story, and I knew it would make a good film, and I knew I could get it made for relatively cheap because it was a two-hander. It was entirely set in one location except for the bath scene. That was shot somewhere else because my dad's home didn't have a bath. And we then had to get clever with how we made it look beautiful and cinematic. So we chose to, as much as possible, keep the camera at her height. So everything is told from her perspective. And color was really important. I made them, art department and costume, take out anything that was red. It was all blue and green. And anytime we saw red, it was linked to her mum that was missing.
Okay. I'm going to say same question to Ida and Armando, or similar question,
Yes.
I guess.
I think that in our case, it is indeed something that the strategy we had is something that wasn't necessarily from a technical perspective, but could be very well used by emerging filmmakers or students. I actually recommended my students to try it out because we were inspired, or Armando started writing about the changes in the landscape he was noticing in his hometown. So, and we started to think, is this climate change? No, is the fact that certain salamanders and other animals are no longer in the landscape, is this climate change, or what is going on? So I thought, well, if we're going to make a film about this, we should keep our carbon footprint as low as possible. We had already traveled to Mexico, so, well, that was already a massive carbon footprint. But also to do other things, to visit family and to screen a film that we were invited to show in different universities in the region of Oaxaca, which is the region we're from. So what I decided is we were not going to do anything additional for the film. We were going to try to collect the images at the places that we were visiting, and that's how we approached it. So it was much more poetic. We did think about a structure and we did think about a theme, but it was more a poetic approach, and we were collecting or gathering or in a way foraging images on the road, and I was doing the cinematography and the sound, so that we had a really, really tiny crew. And I think that is something that is accessible for example, film students, and it gives you a good feeling to know that you're trying to keep your carbon footprint really small.
Great, wonderful. That's exactly answering my question. That's kind of what I wanted to know. So for Jeremiah, maybe kind of the flip side is, were you, what drew you to more of a, I guess what I would call more of, like a drama, and it's almost like a feature, even a bit longer running time. I think it's right up to 20 minutes, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I guess sort of flip side of that question for Jeremiah, what's your, period piece, a few more actors, how did you pull that off, or what made you go in that direction?
I like history, and that's something that's not told, so that's why I wanted to tell that story. And then you can't really you just can't tell a story about Samoa without going to Samoa. And there was talk about, I got feedback to say, well, you could make the Upper North Island look like Samoa. I was like, no, you can't. That's stupid. And that kind of just like, when someone says to me you can't do it, then I'm always going to say, yeah, you can. And so we had to set up some fundraising online, which is pretty standard now these days for filmmaking. And then after that, it was just a matter of trying to get together a crew, a very small crew, because there's no way we could afford to take a normal crew over. So it was, we flew over less than 10 people. And we used guys in the islands that I know have worked on professional sets before. So, we're real fortunate to have guys over there who really know their craft. And then locations, we shot in one location. Mainly the traditional house, where the courthouse, and that place also had accommodation for all our crew, so that was really helpful. So even though we got to go over to Samoa, we still had to be really smart with how we made the film work for us, on a low budget, and we ate off from the land that we were at. So yeah, worked with locals. We had some university students who I got in touch with the university who were interested in film making and TV. They came over and supported as well. So yeah, that's kind of how we tackled it, trying to do it on a shoestring budget, but also hopefully trying to give back, to the homeland.
Wonderful, great to hear. Well, I think they're all amazing films. If I can just jump in at the end here and say that. So yeah, I'll let you take it away again, Surya. But yeah, if we want to wrap up, or if there's sort of last call for questions or comments here. Oh, well, there's one comment from the chat, one final comment. Thank you to CineVic and all the filmmakers. Awesome. Well, I'll take that thanks and pass it on to you, the filmmakers as well. Thank you, Will, for tuning in.
Thanks, Will.
Okay, also to viewers who haven't watched Stories of Decolonization yet, you can stream it now. They are powerful, they are moving, they are insightful, and these are the stories that are at the heart and front line of decolonization, most certainly at least in media. And okay, take it away, David.
Yeah, that's all for this live stream. So tune into our next one, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, May 19th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. That one's going to be filmmakers from the animated and analog screening program. All these films, though, again, are still available to watch until May 31st at shortcircuitfilmfestival.com. So check them out there, along with all their other Q&As as well. So thanks once again to all our filmmakers.
Sure. Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you guys.
Let's meet you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.